Hello, it's Jen. Today we're going to crochet a lampshade and I will show you how to scale this pattern to any size empire shade. Hello again and welcome. The pattern we're going to make today can be scaled for any size empire shade and will also work for some other shade styles as well. I picked out a small lamp so that if someone wanted to follow along and make this exact same project, they could do so. So I've listed this lamp in the description below. Truly, this is a great project to upcycle a thrifted lampshade or maybe give new life to an older lamp. Whether your style is cottagecore, boho, or just wonderfully eclectic, a crocheted lampshade can really add to these sorts of spaces. As you can see, the lamp that I'm using to demonstrate the pattern is quite small. It's only about 11 inches high. The top diameter is 3.5 inches. The bottom shade diameter is just over 4 inches. I assume that lamps like these are used for centerpieces at banquets and weddings, but because it's so small, it could also sit on a bookshelf or in the kitchen. I think there's a lot of little places where you could use a lamp like this one. And bonus, it's rechargeable and offers both cool and warm light. After removing the fabric, I decided to paint the frame. The white frame would be just fine if I were making a white or a beige lampshade. I'm working with a color today, so I want this frame to disappear into the background. Now we're ready to look at our materials for today. I'm using a size 3 crochet thread. This is Aunt Lydia's crochet thread, once again in a size 3. I'm using a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. Anywhere between 3.25 and 3.75 will work well. I've got a couple of needles handy, a sharp one for weaving in my loose ends and a larger blunt one for something I'll show you in just a little bit. And then I also, of course, have scissors, and it's always nice to have a stitch marker handy. Before we get started, let's have a closer look at our lampshade. Here's another frame I purchased so you can see that you need a lampshade where the top ring is attached to the bottom ring. I've also already made a couple lampshades so you can see how these fit onto the frame. They should slip over nice and easily. This one in particular was made with a cotton warp thread that I purchased off of Amazon, so I will leave a link for this in the description below. It comes in quite a few colors. It's a little bit lighter than Aunt Lydia's, but it works really, really well. I also wanted to show you, this one is made with Aunt Lydia's and it's just a little bit larger than the white one, and that's just fine. This pattern is somewhat forgiving, and if anything, you want to err on having a little more room and not having your shade be too tight. More room in the lampshade means it will drape a little bit more on the frame, which is a really nice look. Also, if it's too tight at the top, rather than those scallops standing up and looking sweet the way they are now, they will tend to lean inwards like this. And that is not the look that we're going for. Another fun thing about this pattern is that you'll be able to take these shade covers on and off. This means that you'll be able to clean them when they need a bath, but it also means that you'll be able to change the colors whenever you want. After all of that, we're finally ready to start crocheting. That's probably the longest introduction I've ever done. So for this project, you're going to need to start with a chain that is a multiple of 4 plus 3. You're going to chain a chain long enough that it fits loosely around the top of your frame. Keep in mind that we're going to be working into this chain. These stitches don't need to be overly loose, but also be careful not to make them too tight. I'm going to go ahead and crochet my chain, and then we'll have a look at the fit that we're going for. Throughout this project, keep your lampshade frame handy because we are going to be customizing your shade to your frame. You can see how easily this chain fits on and off the top of the lampshade. I can slide it around. It might look a little loose, but actually this is going to work just fine. Once you're happy with your chain, you're ready to move on. Being careful not to twist the chain, you're going to join with a slip stitch to the first chain. For this project, I like to work under both of the top loops of the chain. You'll see that I'm going under the front loop and the back loop, leaving one loop in the back of my hook. So I'm going through these chain stitches like I would a regular stitch, and then I'm just going to yarn over, pull through the chain, and then pull through the loop on my hook. So now we've taken our chain and formed it into a ring. Now we're all set up for round 1. For round 1, you're going to chain 3, and it's a nice idea to have that third chain be a little bit looser. You're going to be working into that later. And then work 2 more double crochets in the same stitch. Now, working into the chain can be a little awkward, and in truth, round 1 is kind of the most challenging round of the whole project, just because you're working with a lighter weight yarn, really just a thread, and you're working into a chain. You've got this though, and after those 2 double crochets, you chain 1, and you work 3 more double crochets into the same stitch. All I can say is just take your time. The rounds after round 1 go much faster, and it's just so much easier to work into your fan stitches than it is into this beginning chain. Okay, we did it. Our first fan is made. It consists of that beginning chain 3, 2 double crochets after that, a chain 1, and then 3 more double crochets. To continue on, skip the next 3 stitches, and now we start the repeat for round 1. You're going to work 3 double crochets in the next stitch, chain 1, and then 3 more double crochets in that same stitch. And then you'll skip the next 3 stitches. You're going to continue this repeat all the way around, no matter how big or small your frame happens to be. This is your first round of fans, and when you've skipped your last 3 stitches, you're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that beginning chain 3. My 2 notes for you are to 1, try to avoid twisting the beginning chain, although it won't be the end of the world if there's a twist in there. It'll all work out just fine. And 2, as you're inserting your hook into your chain, go under the front and back loops. I just finished my second fan. I'm going to demonstrate one more. So you can see I'm really trying not to twist my beginning chain, and I'm counting 3 stitches, and then I'm working into the next stitch, going under the front and back loop. Here's my first double crochet, and then 2 more double crochets. Chain 1, and then work 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. So right now all of your fans consist of 3 double crochets, a chain 1, and 3 more double crochets, all worked into the same stitch. If you're struggling with your tension, you can do an extra wrap around the pinky just to help to control that. But let's go ahead and have a look. Here are the first 3 fans. So now you're just going to continue on with that repeat all the way around. And here I am, I've time traveled to the end of round 1, and I have just 1 more fan to go. There should be 3 chains between this last fan and your first one, and you're going to complete round 1 by working a slip stitch into the top of that beginning chain 3. There's our chain 1, the next 2 double crochets. Here's our chain 3, and now you'll see why we made that third chain just a little bit bigger, because it's just making your life easier right now, easier to work into that top chain. With that slip stitch, you have completed round 1. Pat yourself on the back. It's all downhill from here. Let's go ahead and have a look at this round. For my little lampshade, I've got a total of 10 fans. And before we get too far, let's go ahead and try it onto the frame. It slips over nice and easy. It has a little wiggle room, and that is exactly what we want. I just finished weaving in my beginning tail just because I don't want it to be a distraction as I'm working through the tutorial. You can save weaving in all your loose ends till the end if you like. So let's start round 2. To begin round 2, you're going to slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. So those next 2 double crochets, and then work one more slip stitch into that chain 1 space. The chain 1 space is the center of your fan. Then you're going to chain 3, make that third chain a little bigger. You'll be thanking yourself at the end of the round, and then work 2 more double crochets in the same space. Chain 1, and then 3 more double crochets in the same space. So you can see that we just worked our first fan into the chain 1 space of the first fan from the previous round. Now we begin our repeating pattern for round 2. You're going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 3 more double crochets in the next chain 1 space. Throughout the pattern, you'll always be working your fans into the chain 1 spaces of the fans from the previous round. I just finished the second fan, and now we're just going back to the beginning of that repeat, and we'll continue this repeat all the way around for our second round of fans. And when you reach the end of round 2, you will join with a slip stitch to the top of the beginning chain 3. Here I am finishing up round 2. There's nothing left to do but that slip stitch. Once again, this is when it's really nice that we made that third chain in our beginning chain 3 just a little bit bigger. And with our slip stitch, round 2 is complete. At the end of each round, I like to slip the shade over the frame and really make a mental note of how much space there is between the shade and the frame. We're going to be keeping an eye on this as we add rounds, because once it starts to get a little tighter, it'll be time to add an increase. Now we're going to continue making our lampshade by repeating round 2. We are going to continue to repeat round 2 until an increase is needed. So I'm going to be checking after each round to see how we're going. Let's look at our shade after adding this third round. I'm just slipping it on, and I can see that I still have plenty of room at the end of round 3, so I'm going to add another round. So here I have 4 rounds back onto the frame. I flip it over. I'm really looking to see how much space I have between the shade and the frame, and it's still quite roomy, so I'm going to add a 5th round. And you can see that the fit is becoming more close. And I could really increase here if I wanted to, but I've decided to add one more round. So here's round 6. It's fitting quite close to the frame now. It's not tight yet, and I want to increase before it starts to feel tight. At no point do I want my lampshade really hugging tightly onto the frame. Here we are at our increase round. To increase, we're going to slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches, and then slip stitch in that chain 1 space, bringing us to the center of our first fan, and then you're going to chain 3. This time you're going to work 3 double crochets into that same chain 1 space. Then chain 1, and now work 4 more double crochets into that chain 1 space. So we're increasing the diameter of our shade by increasing the size of our fans. Instead of 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, now we have 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets. And in fact, that is the repeating pattern for this round. You're going to work 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, and repeat this pattern all the way around. Here's a closer look at those larger fans. And now there's nothing left to do but to continue working our way around. At the end of the round, you'll join with a slip stitch to the top of the beginning chain 3. Now that we've finished our first round of larger fans, let's try it back onto the frame. And when you have a look at it, you can see that once again, there is lots of room between the fabric and the frame. And now I can keep going with these larger fans, and it looks like for my frame, I'm going to need 2 more rounds. To continue working rounds with our larger fans, there's only one change in the beginning. We're going to slip stitch in each of the next 3 stitches, because now there are 3 double crochets between that beginning chain 3 and the chain 1 space. So you're just going to slip stitch in each of these next 3 stitches. That will bring us to the chain 1 space, and we're going to slip stitch in that chain 1 space. Then you'll chain 3 and continue to follow the pattern as written above. I'm going to come back after I've made 2 more rounds. Here I am, and now I have a total of 9 rounds in my lampshade. The first 6 have the smaller fans, the last 3 have the larger fans, and because I've already made a couple of these lampshades, I know that I'm at the length I need to be for this little lamp. When you try on your shade, the bottom of the fans in the last row should line up with the bottom of the frame. It's okay if they're just a little below that bottom frame. It just means that your shade will have a little more drape. Now we can move on to our finishing work. We're going to make a bottom edge for our lampshade. And to do this, we're going to begin by slip stitching in each of the next 3 stitches. And then also slip stitching in that chain 1 space, just like we've been doing at the start of each round. Now you'll chain 3, and then into the same chain 1 space, you're going to work 10 double crochets. Note that there's no chain one space. Instead of making a fan, we're just making a sweet scalloped edge. To continue with the bottom edge, you'll work 11 double crochets in the next chain one space all the way around. At the end of this round, you will join with a slip stitch to the top of the beginning chain 3, and then we'll be finishing off our work. Now that we've worked that slip stitch to the top of the beginning chain 3, we can cut our working yarn, yarn over and pull through that last loop, or if you like, you can do an invisible finish off. And now it's time to create an edge for the top of our lampshade. For our top edge, we're going to join with a single crochet in any of these unworked back bumps like this one at the base of a fan. These are the stitches we're going to be working in for the top edge. I like to start kind of lined up with where I finished the bottom edge. So you just insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 to join with a single crochet, and then you're going to work 8 more single crochets into that same stitch. If you watch me closely, you can see that I'm doing my best to remove any excess slack in the thread, and I'm trying to make these stitches as even as I can because this is going to give us a really pretty scallop. To continue the pattern, you're going to skip the next 3 chains and then working in that next unworked back bump, you're going to work 9 single crochets. So it's always going to be at the base of the next fan. Once again, I'm just going to take my time and make 9 even single crochets. And then I'm going to skip the next 3 stitches and go back to the beginning of that repeat, and I'm going to work this repeat all the way around. I just finished my last scallop, but I haven't finished off my work yet because I want to go around and make sure I'm happy with the way each of these look. This is really the crown at the top of our lampshade, and so I want to make sure I'm really happy with my work. When you are happy, you can cut your working yarn. You can see I'm inserting my hook back in that last loop and pulling the thread through, and that's because I've decided to do an invisible finish off for the top edge. It just looks a little extra neat. So I'm threading my needle. If you pull the beginning tail, it holds up that standing single crochet. We're going to skip over that and then go under both the front and back loop of the next single crochet. And then we're going to go back into the very last single crochet that we worked and go down between the front and the back loops at the top of that single crochet, and also pick up that little thread right behind the back loop. When we pull the thread, this creates a stitch and just a very nice, neat finish. And now we can weave in all of our loose ends. Now, if you don't want to do an invisible finish off, you can just simply slip stitch to that first single crochet and then weave in all of your loose ends. Remember to weave in your loose ends on the wrong side of the fabric. You'll see that I always make 3 passes when I'm weaving in my ends just to make sure they're very secure. It's so satisfying to slip our completed lampshade onto the frame. And now you'll just see me taking the time going around, lining up the bottom edge. Every time I touch this little lamp, I turn it on by accident. And now I'm going around the top and I'm standing these scallops up and just lining up the top. I always enjoy working on the shape because it feels a bit like sculpting to me. Before we call this project completely done, let me show you how we're going to attach our lampshade to the frame. We are going to crochet for ourselves 2 laces, so I need you to make 2 chains. One will be long enough to go around the top of the frame 2.5 times, and the second chain should be long enough to fit around the bottom of the frame 2.5 times. Here I have my 2 chains. I'm just going to snip off this little bit of excess yarn. And now we're ready to whip stitch our lampshade onto the frame. For this job, I'm not going to use the small needle that I was using, but I'm going to use this needle that has a large eye, a blunt end, and a little bend at the tip. I've decided to start with the bottom edge, so I'm going to take the longer of my 2 chains, and I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle. I'm starting off by going underneath and putting my needle up through a space between scallops on the right side of the metal frame. You can see it's a space created by that last row of fans and the final row of scallops. And then I'm going to go through the base of the scallop, but on the left side of the metal frame. You want to go around both the fabric and the frame, and also make sure you leave 6 to 8 inches at the beginning of the chain for tying. Let's continue on. I'm going to go from the bottom to the top through the next space between scallops. And then I'll pull that through, coming through to the right of the metal frame, and then I go down through the center of the next scallop to the left of the metal frame. And I'm just going to continue to do this all the way around until I meet the beginning of my chain. Now I'm just flipping the lamp upright because it's a little easier for me to tie a bow. I'm just doing a classic shoelace tie. I'm making sure that it's tight and that the bow itself is as small as I can comfortably make it, knowing that I may want to take it off and back on again. So not so small that I'll never be able to retie this bow. I'm snipping off the extra, and then you can really just tuck that bow under the scalloped edge and it stays up for you and it just hides underneath there. And now we're going to do basically the same thing for the top edge. So I've got my needle threaded with my shorter chain and I'm going between scallops on the left side of the frame, leaving enough of that chain so that I'll be able to tie my bow when I get all the way around. And then I'm going to go down through the scallop to the right side of the frame. When you pull these chains, you don't have to pull them particularly tight. You don't want to cinch the bottom or the top at all. So back up through the bottom, through the space between the next two scallops, and that's on the left side of the frame. Then I'm going back down through the scallop to the right of the frame. And now let's continue working our way around the top edge. When we get back to the beginning, it's time to tie another itty bitty bow and then tuck it into our work. Our lampshade is now attached and ready to go on display. Now, it might be hard to believe that you can scale this up to any size lampshade, but in fact, I use this exact same pattern for this standard lampshade. This is an 11-inch lampshade. The only difference I can recall is I think I used a 4mm hook for this one, but I used the exact same kind of yarn. Each round of the larger lampshade has 23 fans, and I never needed to increase beyond making fans that were the same size as our large fans. If you have a frame that flares out more than a standard empire, you can make larger fans by just adding to the number of double crochets before and after the chain 1. So your next increase would be 5 double crochets, chain 1, and 5 more double crochets in the next chain 1 space. If you have any questions or need any guidance, please feel free to ask questions in the comments below. I'm always so happy to help. And now let's just take a moment to admire our project from today. I really hope you enjoyed this pattern. I enjoyed sharing it with you. The larger lampshade is one that I just happened to make for myself over 10 years ago, and so it's fun to turn it into a tutorial and share it here with you. Please hit like and subscribe. I share tutorials on Tuesdays. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.